deep in the heart of Texas.
We're in the business of winning.
Don't bet against me.
I don't bet anyway.
Lose your life.
All right, we're about to go live.
Okay.
So we are live with Michael Jordan Fans Are the Best, and we got returning guest, NMB Sports. How are you doing today, Nick?
Good. How you doing?
You look like you are on the prowl, about to go out and go on some adventure.
Maybe a little bit. I don't know if the people heard it, so I'm going to a trading card show later today. But no, just up and about this morning, ready to talk some b-ball.
Nice. And we're going to be talking about the greatest small forwards of all time. Is there something that specifically that you think is great about small forwards versus other positions, or is that or do you think it's all equally the same?
I was kind of thinking about that. I mean, I was sort of thinking about this, and what I kind of came to the conclusion of, or what I kind of thought is how when we're talking about kind of like these all-time great teams, or if you were going to try to put together a really good team, I really feel like the small forward position is like one of those X factors that, of course, there's the three position, right? So, I mean, if you get a guy who can play a little down low, has got some range, plays good D, I just feel like maybe historically speaking, I think the small forward position doesn't exactly get like a whole lot of love or talk. You don't really think about strategic basketball starting with the three, right? It's usually, well, are we going to be guard heavy? Are we going to play, up in the front court? Are we going to try to bang down low, right? There's not a whole lot of talk of like, well, where does our three guy go, right? It just, to me, that's what it feels like looking back and thinking about it. So I feel like a little undervalued, but in the other side of that coin is that they could be a huge X factor in terms of if you have a good three, right? I kind of consider them these guys that kind of just float around, not to like undermine what they do, but if they can kind of play a little bit of everywhere, the three can end up being, I think, a huge X factor in terms of making a team or playing team ball. Being able to go both ways, offense, defense, inside, outside, that kind of thing. So that was kind of all I thought about when I thought about the small forward. It kind of doesn't get talked about a lot, but they can be a huge difference factor if they can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I agree. I think that these guys generally are the guys that you look at to be able to do anything. And not that they're super great, but that they can. I mean, some of them are. You got the LeBron James of the world that can pretty much do anything. If you want to say he's a small forward, I think he's a point guard, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. But he's listed as a small forward. But guys like that have that ability to really do anything. So we went, and you came and you gave a lot of your guys that you thought were great small forwards. I didn't get back to you and tell you some of my guys, but we'll get right into it about one of my guys that I think is one of the greatest small forwards of all time. And that's Rick Barry, Mr. Granny Shot. He's also a Finals MVP, won one title, has, I believe, the highest free throw percentage of all time. Played for the Warriors, played in the ABA, was a monster in the ABA as well. I believe he's one of the first players to go, and I think he's probably the biggest star to leave the NBA and then go into the ABA and just be a monster there. So what do you think about Rick Barry? And chat, please put your 2 cents in regarding this as well.
Yeah, so whenever I was doing research on my the 2011 Mavs versus 94 Rockets debate, and I was doing a lot of researching like how many times had guys won a championship with no other all-stars. Rick Barry's name came up. He's definitely a guy, I think he was with, was it the Warriors? Was that correct? I might be getting that wrong.
Yeah, Warriors, yeah.
Yeah. he's essentially one of the few other star players to win a championship without another all-star on his team. But yeah, the granny shot, obviously real popular for that. Yeah, definitely a guy who gets lost, I think, in terms of all-time greats. People kind of forget how good he was, how well he could score and things like that. So he was definitely on my list. He kind of missed the cut. I think I gave you 7 guys, so because I think 1 or 2 were questionable if they were actually small forwards. But Rick Barry's name was up there. He almost made my cut, but yeah, definitely one of the best to ever play the position for sure, without question.
So I saw a sports science show where they were talking about, and I was talking to Rex about it before he went MIA. Rex, please come back wherever you went. I hope you're still out there somewhere. Anyway, it's about the free throw mechanics of the granny shot. Why he was so good at it is the sports science show said that it was the most consistent. There's less mechanics to it. I don't know if you can see it. I know you're on your phone, but the GIF that I have up is of the granny shot, and he really he makes very little movement when he does it. He just kind of flicks his wrist starting around his crotch area and just lifts it up over his head from the crotch area and just flicks it with some, an underhand follow through. So it was something that I thought was interesting about how you're able to use a shot that people mock for being, they call it the granny shot. Like, oh, well, you can't even lift the ball over your head. You got no strength. An old woman could do it, but it's such a good shot. So what do you think about that? Why do you think people don't use it in the NBA, especially with the success Rick Barry had with it?
Well, I would say the reason people don't do it that much is that, in the flow of a game, you can never shoot a granny shot, right? Like in a real, someone's guarding you or running down the floor or something.
I'm specifically saying about free throws.
Right. Well, that's where I was going, is that, because everyone practices all these, everyone else is really practicing game type situations. If you want to learn the granny shot, it's kind of a whole nother set of skills that you have to learn. And so I think players are probably just so specialized in the way that they shoot. They don't want to mess with their form or get their mechanics down or be thinking about anything else other than just the normal shooting form that we're all used to seeing, right? That is why I would think mainly people don't use it anymore, is it's just having to learn a whole nother skill for a very specific thing. And if you're already shooting 80, 90%, I don't really see how much it could benefit you. Now, if you're like a Shaquille O'Neal type guy, right, you can't really even shoot to begin with, and you're struggling at the free throw line, shooting 50% or what have you, I could see, like, what do you have to lose, right? Like, what do you have to lose? You go ahead and try it, give it a shot. Maybe you shoot 70%, right? That'd be a huge increase, right, for someone like that. So that's why I think it's probably not used very much anymore. I mean, the mechanics of the granny shot do make sense, right? You can put a lot of backspin on the ball. The way that it comes, at the goal and then up and over, some would say it's probably a better angle than if you're shooting over your head. I don't know exactly what the science is on that, but I believe that's the theory, or that's the thought, along with the backspin. So it could be considered to be a softer shot, right? Coming from underneath the rim as opposed to kind of going at the rim. You might get a shooter's bounce more times than not. So there's definitely something to it, right? It's definitely not a gimmick. But that would largely be why I think guys just don't do it anymore, is just people are so specified these days. That was one of the things that definitely changed during our generation. Was it used to be play every sport, do everything you can, and now it's kind of pick one thing and be really good at it and practice it year round. But that's why I think probably people don't do it. It's just a whole nother set of mechanics and skills. And you're already shooting one way. Just keep shooting that way, especially if you're 80, 90%, right? There's really no point in changing at that point.
Yeah, and I agree. If you're a great free throw shooter and you got it down already, why change it to maybe get a few extra percentage and restart everything? But if you're Shaq or Wilt Chamberlain or Rondo or Dwight Howard or some guys that have these horrific free throw percentages,
Yeah.
why not take a shot at it? Uh,
Exactly. I agree with that.
Michael says Shaq said he shot 0% from the. He'd rather shoot 0% from the foul line than shoot the granny shot. Now, so I get that it looks silly and people make fun of it, but man, like you're a pro. Well, to be fair, he still got paid for shooting, the 40 some, 50 some percent, 30 some percent at his worst, I believe.
Yeah.
So I mean, he still was a
Too
top
funny.
paid player in the league. So I mean, did he really need it? I guess not for his livelihood, but I think it would have made him a lot better if he was able to increase it by 20, 30%. They definitely wouldn't have done the hack-a-shack.
100%. Yep.
Look at that free throw lane in this. Well, I don't know if you could see it. And the free throw lane in this GIF looks ridiculously large. But that's
Well, didn't they used to do it on the outside and then they brought it in a little bit? Is that I might be misremembering, but I think that happened at one point.
Yeah, you know what? That's something I want to look up because this thing looks like it looks a lot bigger than, but then granted, I haven't played on an NBA court ever. I usually just play in gym, so maybe I'm just misremembering thing, but the colors are really offset. So, but
I think the lane's the same. I could be wrong.
yeah, I'm not sure. RC Talks Basketball and Caitlin, welcome. That free throw form was ever so hideous. Hey, I'm not saying it doesn't look silly, but if it works, it works. And if you're a fringe player, why not do it? I know there was one guy on the Rockets a few years ago that was doing it. I don't know if he's still in the league, but he started doing the granny shot to get his free throws better. And really like with the star players, that's one thing. Like I said, like if you're Shaq and you can just stay in the league and just dominate either way, then why change up your form? But if you're a fringe player and one of the things that's keeping you out is your free throw percentage, I would think there's somebody in the league that does it. On a sidebar, they took it out of NBA 2K24, and I hadn't played in a couple of years, and I did it just because uh, I decided to throw my hat in there again. Although I've been disappointed with it for quite some time. And they took the granny shot, which I used to use all the time, away, so that was kind of disappointing. RC says that thing, free throw lane looking like a touchdown end zone. Oh yeah. It's huge in this GIF. And then Michael says 89.8%. I guess was his free throw percentage, which is amazing.
Yeah, he was an incredible free throw shooter.
Do you have anything to say more about Rick Barry before we get into the next individual?
No, I don't think so.
All right. The next guy we're going to talk about is Elgin Baylor. I know he's on your list. I'm going to turn off my camera for a second, but please go on a monologue about Elgin Baylor.
Yeah, so Elgin Baylor, another guy that kind of gets lost, I think, in some of the all-time great conversations. Definitely the best rebounding small forward of all time. One of the best rebounders, period, of all time, to be honest, which is quite remarkable. Definitely, I think, in my opinion, when I think of Elgin Baylor, I think of kind of one of the first guys to be very fluid. Like, he was very smooth. He wasn't... I think when you watch a lot of like the old tapes, right, the guys look very stiff. It was just kind of the way it was played, and a lot of the rules at the time, right? It's just kind of the way it was, right? In my opinion, I feel like Elgin Baylor was one of the first guys to really be fluid, like with his body, the way that he moved, the way that he went to the hole, the way he got position, right? That's just my 2 cents on Elgin Baylor. That's the first thing that comes to mind is greatest rebounding small forward ever. I think is pretty. I don't think anyone would argue that, unless I'm forgetting someone, but I don't think I am. He averaged like 20 rebounds a year for a few years. And other than that, other than rebounding, I think of just a guy who was very fluid. Like he could really I'm kind of missing the word right now, but he could really move his body. And I think he had a lot of, he was very nimble, attacked the hole a lot, right? So I think he was one of the first guys to really be not so stiff when he moved, right? And he had sort of like a flow to his game in a way when he had the ball in his hands.
I agree. I think he's often one of the most overlooked guys. Now, to be fair, in general, for the guys that have massive stats that really didn't do much with their careers, I do kind of overlook them. So I do find it fair that he gets overlooked, but he had some monstrous statistical seasons. I think the year that Bill Russell won MVP, I think it was 62. I believe it was the 55 point per game Wilt Chamberlain year. That year, I think it was Wilt Chamberlain had 55 points per game and 28 rebounds per game. Elgin Baylor averaged, I think, 38 and 22, and Bill Russell beat them out both. So he was a monster.
Yeah.
He just never got it done. I mean, he's credited with one ring, but he retired during that season, so he really had nothing to do with that playoff run. So, I mean, I do think he deserves more flowers than he gets. A lot of people kind of just disregard him or forget that how great he was. At the same time, it would have been nice to see him actually participate with, because he was on the team with Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West later on in his career. And it would have been great to see them actually go all the way with it, or for him to go through the playoffs. But he hadn't. Let me read some of these comments in the chat. RC talks basketball and Caitlin. Joakim Noah had the ugliest shot form to me, but sometimes it went in. Joe Coughlin. Joe Coughlin. Oh, I don't know who you are. NBA lane is 16 feet wide. RC talks basketball and Caitlin. I won't pretend like I know about Elgin Baylor that much, but I heard he was great. Joe Coughlin says Oscar averaged a triple-double that year too. Michael says Elgin was my dad's favorite player. You're right, Joe. That was, yeah, he definitely did do that that year too. I forgot about that. That was a monstrous year for guys in the league for, and I believe it was 62.
Yeah, I believe that's probably the most contentious MVP of all time, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, you could definitely make an argument for it. You got all these great guys doing that, well, I'll be more specific. I think people felt Bill shouldn't have won it. I don't know who should have won it, but I think they felt Bill shouldn't have won it. I think it was kind of, maybe I should have rephrased it like that. Yeah, and I mean, that's fair in a way, but for me, a lot of people kind of they argue against this point, but I believe that I think the best player on the best team should win MVP because
you do.
Yeah, no, in generalities, like for instance, the whole Russell Westbrook getting the triple double and they giving him MVP and he's the 8th seed with like a under 500 record. I think this is one of the trivia questions I gave. Who had the worst record for winning MVP, which was Bob Pettit.
But Westbrook was 2nd or 3rd, right?
Yeah, and to me, like it sucked. To me, I don't think it's fair. Like you can be a stat patter and have a crappy team. How are you the most valuable player in the league when you can't even get your team to win? So that's this is
a good topic because I've always had the thought that you should minimum make the playoffs. I think is like a beginner is like the very first criteria, but having to be on the winning team, I don't know about that. I guess because there are a lot of teams who maybe are like 2nd, 3rd, 4th seed in their conference, and it's really just one guy who's getting them there. Whereas, if you're on like the 1st or 2nd seed and you are on objectively like a good team, they might still make the playoffs, right? I don't know. That's actually a good topic. If like how much should that be weighted, being on the best team?
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's like an end all be all, but in generalities, right. Like if you're not a top 3 seed, I think there's arguments for guys. You have to be at the top of the league in some way.
Yeah.
Let me address some of these in the chat. Joe Coughlin says, and I'll just say, Joe, when team with West and Wilt, Elgin took most shots. Robin, Sports and Fitness Rants, welcome. How's the water park going? Biller played in the Army during his career and could only play games on the weekends, I think. Maybe. That's something I'm not really sure. Robin says, yo, was in the Army, not played. RC Talks Basketball with Caitlin says, Joe Coughlin, Oscar Robertson averaging triple doubles back in the day was the original beast mode. Michael says 47 and 35, 2016-17 Thunder. Yeah, but they were still like the 8th seed. I believe that's the year that he got the triple double and won the MVP. They gave that man Westbrook the MVP literally for averaging a triple double. Now I understand and historically it was important because nobody had done it for almost 50 years. So I understand the appeal to give Russell Westbrook the MVP. I just disagree with it. And then RC Talks Basketball says, just call me RC. Everyone else does. It's much shorter too. Okay, RC. Yeah, I will. And then Joe, I'll call you Joe. But yeah, if anybody knows about Elgin Baylor and Robin, if you want to elaborate with Elgin Baylor being in the Army, what years they were, because I wouldn't think he would do that. The whole thing. I think his record says different of how many games he played, but I might be mistaken. But yeah, do you have anything more to say about Elgin Baylor?
No, him and Barry, though, back-to-back are nice because they both get overlooked a lot.
Another guy that I think is a little overappreciated, who we're going to be going into next. Now, I'm not saying he wasn't great. Like, putting him on this list is fine. But that's Tracy McGrady.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead.
You had put him on your list, so just real fast. To me, I think he never got out of the second round of the playoffs.
Never got out of the first.
Yeah, I was gonna say first, but then I was like, oh, maybe I'm mistaken. But
well, technically he joined San Antonio later in his career, but just counting his days with Orlando and Houston, he never got out of the first round.
Yeah. So why do you have him as one of the greatest small forwards of all time? Granted, you gave a 7-person list, so having him at the back end is fair. I think you had him number 6. In front of Elgin, which I wouldn't put him there, but well, for one, I guess 2 parts. Why would you put him in front of Elgin, and why, and what puts him in the conversation for you?
So one of the things I think people don't realize about T-Mac is just how good his defense was. You could say at times, but overall his defense was heavily underrated. There's stories, Kobe and him when he was on the Olympic squad. I think Coach K talked about him before or something. Like his defense was among some of the best when he was in the league, and I don't think people really talk about that enough. Obviously, his athletic ability, his scoring. T-Mac to me is like one of those guys that you would make in a lab if you were going to make a basketball player, if that makes sense, right? He could essentially do just about everything that I can think of, in terms of his position being a small forward. I think in terms of what he did at his best, I think he's one of the best. I think you said a little overappreciated. I think he's definitely, when we talk about all time, he's underrated. Obviously, his playoff, career was not that good. He obviously never won a ring as like the best player or second best player on a team. I think he won one there with San Antonio, but obviously we're not really counting that.
He was on the team with the Ray Allen shot.
Oh, okay. So he never won one with San Antonio? No,
he only played that 1 year there.
Dang. Okay. Well, I guess the McGrady curse is real then. But just if we take like his sort of, he never got out of the first round aside, T-Mac was easily one of the best players of his era, of his generation. And I think just because he didn't necessarily win, I don't think is necessarily all that fair to put all on him. Obviously, it is his biggest knock, and it is unfortunate that he just never could put it together in the off season at all, like not even once. I know that's a big knock on him. Maybe say he doesn't have the clutch gene, right, or what have you. But In terms of just his ability on paper and on film and what you saw of him and his stats, like I think he's easily one of the best players of all time that doesn't really get talked about. And I'll just reiterate what I said at the beginning, and that is his defense, I think, is probably one of the most underappreciated things about him. And that, he could lock guys down from time to time, and he was definitely not a liability on the defensive end. And when you put that together with how good he was at scoring, I think T-Mac gets overlooked a lot because, again, he didn't win. But taking that aside, you can put him almost toe-to-toe with just about anybody. So, he really played more like a shooting guard, too, in a lot of ways. But if we're going to talk about threes, that's also why I left him out of the list, out of the top 5, I mean. In a little bias, he was one of the best players, obviously, when I was growing up. But I just think as a total package as a player, I think he's one of the best to ever play, and that's just my 2 cents on him.
I don't even know if he was top 10 in his era, man. Like, he was good. Don't get me wrong, but
definitely in scoring for a while he was. If you want to say maybe he wasn't a top 10 player all around, maybe not. But in terms of definitely scoring for sure, for a while there, he was definitely top 10 year in, year out.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah, he was definitely an amazing scorer. But I think just thinking off the top of my head, I think I could think of 10 guys I would pick over him in the 2000s. But I mean, he was great. He was definitely fun to watch. And I do think it stinks because the Rockets teams when they had Yao Ming, who was there? I think they had Steve Francis, Yao Ming, him, and then they had a wing player too, a defensive wing, right?
I think they traded Steve Francis and some people for Tracy McGrady.
Okay.
Because remember, Steve Francis played for Orlando there for a little bit.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, but they definitely had a decent team. Like in his prime years when he was in Orlando, I mean, he was essentially the only guy on Orlando. Let's be honest. But again, that's still in the weak East, right? If you're a really good singular player, you should be able to get your team at least out of the first round. And I think he did blow a 3-1 lead against Detroit. It might have been the year Detroit won it or the year before. And then obviously in Houston, Yao Ming went down a lot, so there's that. Houston had some decent teams there a few years, but obviously Yao Ming was in and out of the lineup a lot.
Yeah. And that's one of the biggest what ifs. Not to get on the sidebar, but he was a monster. I think his first game, I heard an interview where Shaq was talking about it, where I think he blocked him like 6 times. He blocked him like 3 times in a row. The first play he went up against him.
Oh yeah, I mean I live in Houston now, even though I'm a Dallas fan originally, right? But I live in Houston, yeah, and I can definitely remember all the hype around Yao Ming and when T-Mac came over, and so I watched Yao Ming a lot, like on local TV and stuff, and like, man, if he was hitting that little baby hook, I mean, there literally nothing you could do. It was really crazy to watch. Sometimes he'd come down and hit 4 or 5 of those in a row, and you just be like, literally, there's nothing you can do, like, at all, and like nothing at all.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And then he had a mid-range game too. Let me
Could
address
shoot free throws, yeah.
Let me address the chat real fast. Joe says Baylor was drafted and got stationed on the West Coast to play roughly half the season for 2 seasons. Okay, that's great information. Michael says the Thunder were the 6th seed that year. Yeah, to me, even if you are the 6th seed, that's too low, man. Like, and again, I'm not saying Russell wasn't a great or isn't. I mean, he's still in the league. Isn't whatever, a great player, but I just don't think he should have got MVP. RC says, I thought T-Mac played a 2-guard spot. Maybe he didn't. T-Mac, in just my opinion, he was similar to Carmelo. The man was a supreme scoring machine to the maximum. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I think, maybe a Carmelo before Carmelo. I do think he was better than Carmelo, if I had to say.
Yeah, I do too.
I think Carmelo is massively overrated. Just on
Me too.
my 2 cents. Great scorer. I just never
But just
really.
purely a jump shooter, right? Like T-Mac could essentially pull up a jump shot anywhere on the floor, could take it and finish all the way and dunk it. I mean, I think T-Mac was I don't want to say head and shoulders better than Carmelo, but I would say he was on a bit of a higher level than Carmelo, in my opinion. Defense too.
Yeah. I would even put him a tier above. Whatever that means. Like I think he's
Yeah.
significantly better than Carmelo.
Yeah.
Robin says, send me the link to the live stream. I'm gonna try to get on. Robin, I'm doing this over Discord. I will shoot you.
Oh no. One of us said something Robin didn't like.
Robin, I'm gonna send you the Discord link, but I'm not doing it on StreamYard. So if you don't have Discord and you want to set it up, I'll put you on. But I'm already into the game, so I apologize. I'm not gonna restart everything because I have a whole system set up with all these photos and stuff off of OBS. Now, if you don't want to do Discord right now, I can talk you through how to set it up later. But I will send it to you just in case you have it. If not, then next time. I know you're out there with your family, but I'm sending it to you right now. Let's see. Yep.
And I also agree with that last comment that T-Mac is more of a two guard, in my opinion, in terms of how he plays. But they put him at small forward on a lot of the stuff, so I snuck him in there. That's also why I put him left him off the top 5.
Yeah. No, because I think he's been listed as both. I know he's, I would say he probably is. It's hard.
I might have forced him in there a little bit.
Yeah. Let's see. RC says T-Mac was going to play the 2 and Grant Hill was going to play the 3 for the Magic, but Hill's injuries made him miss major time. You know what? Spoiler alert. Grant Hill is not on this list. One of those guys that I think had a really huge what if. I know when he came out, a lot of people were saying he was the next guy up after Michael Jordan. And I think he could have been,
Yep.
but he just constantly kept getting injured. What do you think about Grant Hill? I'm going to turn the camera off for a minute.
Definitely, man. Grant Hill, Penny Hardaway, Bias. Those are definitely some of the biggest what ifs ever. Now, what's unfortunate about Penny Hardaway and Grant Hill is that we saw them play and they were really good, right? So with Bias, we didn't really even get to see him play in the NBA. So maybe there's kind of like since we didn't really know, who knows, right? Even though by all accounts he would have been, pretty good at the very least. But seeing Grant Hill and Hardaway and those guys play, man, Hardaway and Grant Hill were definitely the real deal, and it's a shame that they went down to injury. Now I think about it, the Magic have gotten a lot of bad luck with injuries, so Grant Hill was like the next MJ, really, in a lot of ways. Had the mid-range game, maybe a little bit of a better outside shooter, maybe a slightly better rebounder. Probably not as good of a defender, but you could say maybe just a little bit better of an outside shot. Probably him and Jordan had really good mid-range to, attacking the basket. Jordan probably attacked the basket a lot better, though. But yeah, he had that good, nice mid-range. That's why people compared him to Jordan, and he could kind of do it all, kind of the same build and everything. So yeah, he was supposed to be the next guy, and then got hurt, so it's unfortunate. Just the way that it is.
Michael says Tracy McGrady was a 2000s Pete Maravich. Great player, but not a lot of playoff success. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, that's a good analogy. I think Pete Maravich was, I don't know. I think he's one of a kind in regards to his time. I think Tracy McGrady had a lot of peers in respect to how he played, like Kobe, his cousin Vince Carter. I think he had a lot of comparisons. I think Pete Maravich was just Pete Maravich during that time. I'm not saying he was the best player, but I don't think he was doing all this fancy stuff. If any of the chat disagree, I know Joe is bringing up stuff about and I'm gonna bring it up in a second. About guys in the 80s.
T-Mac or Vince Carter, in your opinion?
Who would I pick?
Yeah.
In peak, I'd pick T-Mac.
Okay.
So yeah, I think T-Mac was better in peak. Now Vince was entertaining just as much as T-Mac. I just don't think he could do as much as T-Mac could.
Yeah, so my thing with T-Mac, right, is just his skill set on paper. And again, he was really good for his day, right? So it's not like I'm saying a bunch of what ifs, right? We saw him play. He was really good. It like his skill set on paper and what he could do. And I think, again, my opinion, I think his defense is really underrated in terms of when we talk about how good of a two-way player he was. In my opinion, right, that's just my thing. Is just his skill set overall as a player, I think was incredible. Is mainly my why I like him so much.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. He definitely deserves a lot of the credit. I just, I don't know if I'd put him as high up as you did, but he's definitely, a great player. Joe says just 80s small forwards: Doc, Worthy, Bird, Danley, English, Dominique, Aguirre, or Aguirre. Sorry, I live near Mexico. Cummings and King. Yeah, I think that's a good list. I think Doc is massively underrated as of late. But yeah, I think that's the right list. RC says, imagine if Toronto would have just kept Vince and T-Mac together in Toronto. That could have been something special, but Toronto gave up on T-Mac too soon. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Who knows? Like, obviously, it wasn't working there, so it might not have ever worked. Rex would say situation and circumstance, and I think that matters. Like, especially with team dynamics. Some guys just don't work well together, and especially when they're young, it might stunt their development. I think there's a lot of times that happens. That a lot of great guys are put second fiddle to some guys, and they just don't develop the way that they could have. And that goes with anything in life. Sometimes you just are put in a situation where you're not going to be able to be as good as you could be. And, not to be a life coach or anything like that, but sometimes you got to get out of those situations where you feel like you could do better, and do better, because you only die once, as they say. So with the whole T-Mac staying in Toronto, if it all worked out perfectly, yeah, that would have been cool, but I don't think it was working out.
Yeah, great example. People talk about Dirk and Nash all the time, like, oh, what if they would have stayed together? And people always say, like, they would have won at least 2 rings. And I'm actually one of those ones where I kind of push back on that a little bit. And I'm like, I'm not so sure, like they went on to win 3 straight MVPs respectively, right? Separately from each other on different teams. Dirk goes to the finals twice, wins once. If they stay together, like they probably don't reach those heights. Maybe not, per se, right? It's kind of hard to say that they would do better together, and that together they would win 3 MVPs and go 1 for 2 in the finals, right? Like, that's kind of hard to beat in a 10-year stretch, right? Thereafter, when they were both really good on the Suns and the Mavericks. So it's not always that simple, right? I mean, it's one of those things where, like, on paper, yeah, like, that makes a lot of sense. It's very enticing to think about. It's fun to think about in your head. Like, if they would have been as good as we know they were together, and maybe somehow, even took it to another level, that's pretty crazy to think about. But I like the what ifs where it's like we saw what someone did, right? Like, people talk about bias all the time as like a what if, right? Well, I never really saw him play in the NBA. No one did, right? So to me, the Hardaway and the Grant Hill is a little more fun to dig into, because it's like we've seen what they did. We saw what they did, right? And then they got hurt, and we can more legitimately think about what if. And when we saw Dirk and Nash play together, I mean, yeah, they did some good things, but they reached even higher heights separately. And for me, it's hard to say that, like, well, what if they would have stayed together, they would have done more. I'm not so sure, like, I'm not so sure about that.
Yeah, definitely. Let me address the chat a little bit. Michael says T-Mac could rebound and pass. Melo can't pass. Yeah, Melo, I think his nickname was the Black Hole. It was not coming back out once he got it. Robin says, nah, you guys are saying good stuff. I didn't want to miss this topic. He's out with his family right now. Joe says, N. Mullen. I believe he's talking about the 80s comment he made earlier. RC says, at Michael, facts, Carmelo could pass, but he was allergic to dishing the ball.
Yeah. Everyone can pass, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, except for him, yeah. He's got a problem letting go of it. Michael says, that's the sad part. He was a good passer in college, Melo was. Yeah, and they won the national championship, and and again, it's not that he wasn't a great player. He was, in the top 10 of the league for most of his career at some point. But to me, he's definitely not a top 10 all time. Unless you want to consider
one of the greatest jump shooters ever, though. You could say that for sure.
Yeah, he was a good post player as well. Particularly high post. Let's see. Joe says Bird played with bias at Reds camp and believed he had all the all-time great talent. He wrote that in his book Drive.
Think about if Bird got biased, dude. That's freaking crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that would have been great. That's another, huge what if, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, he was lauded as that. And I'm not saying that he would have been a bust, but who knows? He might have been a bust. It's just, it's what it is. What's up?
I think the interesting aspect about Bias is that he was going on to such a great team already that for how high his hopes were, they maybe needed him to do half that, right? And they would have been maybe unstoppable. So that's what's crazy to think about with Bias is just, we don't even need you to be as good as we hope you can be, right? We just need you to be half of what we hope you can be, and we'll be rolling, right? That's what kind of sucks about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It would have been interesting to see, but sometimes you get some bad stuff, and it kills you. But
yeah, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah, but yeah, not to laugh. It's not funny, but it's sad. RC says they got rid of not just Steve Nash, but Michael Finley too. All three of them should have stayed together and won at least 2 or 3 rings. I totally disagree with trading Nash and Finley. Again,
my boy Finley, man. I love me some Finley, dude.
Yeah, when I interviewed Nick for the first time, when I was trying to set up the debate between him and Universe Galaxy, when I had less than 100 guys on my channel, that's when I did the Michael Jordan fan interview, and he says I'm more of a Michael Finley fan than a Michael Jordan fan.
Yeah, dude, for sure.
Yeah,
love Michael Finley, dude.
It's a great one-liner. It's beautiful. Michael says David Stern would be very hard on Bias if he lived. Maybe. That's a good point. Are you going to let him compete with Michael, or you're just going to, have Michael be the guy and shut Bias out? Now, I don't know anything about Bias, how he was the marketing for Bias or anything like that. If any of you do, let me know what you think about that. Do you think that he could have outshined Michael Jordan marketing-wise? Or do you think that Michael would have been the guy and David Stern would have shut him out? What do you think about that, Nick?
The only reason I like MJ to edge out Bias, if let's just say Bias was a great player as much as we hoped he could be and how much he stacked up against Jordan when they were kind of both coming in the league, I would still say Jordan. Bias was more like strength and attacking. While Jordan was too, Jordan still had a little bit more of that. A little bit more of the smoothness to his game that was really fun to watch. I think he was also probably a better shooter, or became a better shooter in the mid-range and whatnot. Now, who knows? Bias might have adapted his game and became an even better shooter. But again, it's close, right? When they were coming up, I mean, Bias and Jordan, I mean, you could argue Bias was better in many ways, right? But I think if I had to just know what I know, I guess I would say Jordan still edges him out. I just think he has overall a little bit more of a complete game. The game started going more to perimeter play, which I think favors Jordan a little bit, especially on the defensive end. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Now, in terms, one of the topics I wish we could have that would be pretty cool would be your favorite conspiracy theory about the NBA or basketball. So like that would be funny. You know, in my mind, they want Bias to outshine Jordan because of the Celtics, right? You keep that franchise going. That's a pretty big market. You want to keep that rolling probably as much as possible, right, at that time. So in terms of what the NBA would want, I don't know. But, I mean, I still think Jordan gets Bias in the end.
So, yeah, no, I think so too. Robin has joined Discord and wants to join the chat. I guess he is anxious to join.
Uh-oh.
So,
Which one of us got him going?
well, I don't know. I mean, there's all these guys. So, but
do we want to rattle off the rest of our small forwards real quick, or let Robin get in on this?
I guess we just let him get in on it in general. I'll change the cameras up as it's happening in the background, but
Okay.
we'll wait for him to get in. Robin, I saw you joined. I gave you access to the show channel on the MJFB community page. By the way, if any of you have Discord in the chat and you want to be a part of the community page and BS about this channel, about some of the shows, or if you just want to network and do things that I like, please do. It's in the description section. So let me go through some of the chat while we're waiting for Robin, if he's still there. Joe says Bias was a much better jump shooter than Jordan. Again, I don't know a ton about Bias other than the reputation, so I wouldn't be surprised.
Was he? Well, I was saying comparative to what Jordan became, was Bias still better coming out than what Jordan became in terms of the mid-range game? That's what I was kind of saying, is that just seeing how Jordan developed, right? I don't know. It seems like Jordan probably would have been the better mid-range shooter at the end of the day, but coming out, I probably have actually no doubts about that. Jordan wasn't exactly known for being like a great shooter, right? I think he's a little overrated as a college player. I got to say that in terms of what some other players have stacked up during their college career. But he was still a decent player. But yeah, he was not the best shooter coming out of North Carolina or going to North Carolina either way, right? So I could definitely see that. But what Jordan became in terms of the mid-range game, I think, in my opinion, would be considered better than what Bias was. So that's kind of more or less what I was saying. I could still be wrong.
Yeah. I mean, like, I would think that MJ likely developed, into a better, you know what I'm saying? Like, who knows how much Len Bias would have developed. Now, I'm not trying to sound nasty, but if he was into the stuff he was doing that, that ended his life, and if he kept doing it, I would think, just what do you call it? Just thinking up front about it. I can't think of the word. He probably would have been a bust if he just kept doing drugs. You know what I mean? Because I don't know his whole story, but Robin's in here, so let's.
But just taking the drugs out of it, just them as players, it seems like Jordan would have been, from what he ended up being, was the better shooter, especially the mid-range game.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe. Robin came in and he came out of this.
There he is.
He's back again.
I see him.
Can y'all see me?
I can hear you.
We can hear you. Can't see you.
Oh.
You got to put your camera on. There's a button for the camera. All right, there you go.
Yo. What's good, guys?
What up?
What's up? Let me get you on here.
All right, who's getting it? What do one of us say?
Yo, this is a good topic, man. Y'all got some good names you guys were saying out there, man. Much respect to what you guys were saying.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I'm set. You guys can talk. I know you're not on the camera right now, but just let me set it up. So if you guys can interact.
Nah, you guys, yo, Nick, man, word up. You was talking about T-Mac, man. For real, yo. I like what you were saying about T-Mac, man. You were giving T-Mac a lot of props, man. And I think everything you were saying, man, was really nice, man. It was good. Because, yeah, his all-around game of T-Mac, like you were talking about the defense, you were giving him a lot of props on his D. So I was really liking that, man. I was like, man, I got to get on this topic, man.
Yeah, for sure. I think T-Mac's underrated big time.
T-Mac was like one of those like explosive scores, man. Like where he could just score like 15 points in like 5 seconds or like 10 seconds, just come out and just straight, from all kinds of ways, from going to the hole or the mid-range or the deep three. So I think he was a potent offensive threat to go along with, like you said, his other things that he could do on the court and his athleticism.
Yeah. I just on paper, like in what he did on the court too, all around, both ways. I think he's one of the most underrated players ever, for sure. It's unfortunate his winning didn't match his ability.
Real fast. Welcome, Robin. I'm glad you could join us. How's your trip going so far?
Yeah, no, I just got back, man. I got back a little bit earlier than I thought, but I just got back, and that's why I hit you guys up, man. And I told my wife, I was like, yo, I want to go run in the car real quick and get on the video with these guys.
Yep. Awesome. I'm glad you had fun. Let me catch up with the chat, and then let's get into the next guy after that real fast. Another great all-time guy that I feel gets overlooked a lot. RC says, y'all remember that game when Dallas, the year before they drafted Dirk, the Lonely Mavs shocked the MJ Bulls. Finley outscored.
I do remember that game.
MJ on that night. He helped from the Ceballos and Robert Pack. Michael says, I'm talking about the drugs with bias. Stern could not stand players doing drugs. I mean, who could blame him? I mean, you're going you're going around getting high, and this guy killed himself off of it. So it's sad.
Yeah, that's like when people got mad at the dress code. You remember how that was a big thing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and people kept saying, well, the players should be able to do whatever they want. Like, I understand that, but you have to understand the NBA is a business. Like, they work for an employer, right? If the employer says you need to wear this on game day to the stadium, it's really not that big of a deal, man. Like, you have all this other time to go do photo shoots or do whatever you want. And it's like that thing. It's like, well, they don't like, their players doing drugs. Like, well, no crap, dude. They have a $1 billion industry, right? Like, the players are the product, whether you hate that term or not, right? They have an image to uphold, right? And so, like, yes, it's kind of sucks, but it's a business, man. Like, definitely, owners and things like that, they hate crap like that, man. Like, that was why Allen Iverson was such like an icon. Is because of what he represented, and then they're like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. Like, that was like, I remember that was so crazy, dude. But yeah, don't forget it's a business and there's a boss. Like, it sucks, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, and I agree in general. Like, to me, I mean, to be fair, I really don't care what they wear on the court, but I didn't get the whole upheaval of, why don't they let them wear what they want, just for the aspect of being in a business, being part of something that big. I mean, do I care if they wear suits or not? I don't, but I didn't get you're taking away their rights, or I'm not saying that that's what they said verbatim, but that's kind of how they act. They're like, well, why can't they just wear what they want? Let me run through these comments a little bit more, and we'll get to the next guy. Joe says, Bias had zero ball handling, biased, and demonstrates his lack of decision-making, so Jordan by a mile. Bias had NBA three-point range. You're comparing veterans against college. Bias. In regards to MJ, what you said earlier.
So, Bias didn't have good handles, but he had three-point range? That seems that's a rarity.
All right, let's get into the next guy. John Havlicek. Robin, since you just came on the channel, what do you think about John Havlicek? Well, what's some things that stick out to you? Do you think he's an underappreciated all-time small forward?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's in my top 5 small forwards of all time. And if you don't have him in your top 5 smalls of all time, then you don't know about John Havlicek, because this man was insane. This guy went against the best competition at that position. This guy supposedly had like the heart, like a little bit bigger than us, the lungs that were bigger than us. This guy could like run for days. He never came out the game. He played both ends of the court. A lot of people don't really know that John Havlicek is one of the greatest defensive small forwards in the history of the game, up there with someone like a Scottie Pippen on the defensive end. Yes, that's right, John Havlicek. And John Havlicek was way more potent on the offensive end. And John Havlicek was a guy who actually, led those Boston Celtics teams after Bill Russell left. So much respect to John Havlicek.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I slipped up here and I forgot about John Havlicek. That's my fault. But what I will say about John Havlicek is, in terms of resumes, he's probably a top 10 or 15 player of all time, just in terms of his resume on paper, what he did in the league while he was there. He's definitely underrated in terms of that. When people talk about GOATs and you want to go just simply based on the resume argument, Havlicek's name needs to be a lot higher. That's definitely for sure. Definitely was a guy who played after the Cousy era with Bill Russell, and then one after Bill Russell. That's also important. Yeah, definitely. Everything Robin just said, I echo a lot. But my thing with John Havlicek is his resume is almost second to none. There's not a lot of guys out there with a better resume than John Havlicek. That's definitely for sure.
8-0.
His resume is. I might have to go and do a video just on his resume. It might be top 10 all time.
Yeah, but the only thing that takes it away from me is that most of those championships, he was with the Dynasty Celtics. Now, I give him credit for winning. I believe it was the 2 in the 70s.
That's why he's not the best small forward of all time or the greatest small forward of all time. That does take away a little bit from him,
Yeah, because Bill Russell was the guy during the 60s, during the 50s, or the 60s particularly when Havlicek was playing before he was the leader of the team. But I do believe he won a Finals MVP as well. And obviously, that award wasn't.
He kept the train rolling.
Yeah, no, there was a continuum after Russell left, being
Dave Cowens, all those guys, man.
Absolutely. And yeah, Havlicek, I do believe, is one of the most underappreciated all-time greats of all time. Now, I do believe that, he was second fiddle, or you could say more, lower than second fiddle for a lot of the championships he won, but he was still a big part of those teams. And that's something that a lot of people don't appreciate or give credit to him for that. Which I do understand to a certain respect, but that's like, why is Scottie Pippen in the mix then? So, take him out, take all these other second fiddle guys out if you're not going to put Havlicek in there. What do you think about it, Nick?
Yeah, kind of what I said before, and also, yeah, massively underrated defender. I think he's one of the top steals getters ever, I believe. Definitely some all-NBA teams on the defensive end. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, because you think about Russell and the Celtics, and you think about Bird and all these other guys, Cousy even sometimes gets mentioned higher than Havlicek. He just gets lost in the shuffle, man. All these guys we've mentioned so far, it seems like are guys who are, in my opinion, like vastly underrated in terms of their ability and career so far that we've mentioned. So, yeah, Havlicek's another guy who gets lost in the shuffle way too much.
Yep. You have anything more to say about Havlicek? What do you think, Robin? What do you think about Cousy versus Havlicek, since Nick brought it up?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, listen, it's hard to compare these guys who played different positions back in those days. They were in basically different eras, really. Cousy was more of the 50s into the mid-60s, early 60s, really. Havlicek, the greatness of Havlicek is that, like I said, he kept the train rolling. Nothing really stopped for the Celtics, so to speak, going into the 70s after Bill Russell left. And it was due to the greatness of a John Hondo Havlicek, Dave Cowens. He was the leader, though, Havlicek, and he kept it rolling. And his two-way play is underrated. A lot of times now, we just think about scoring and numbers, scoring-wise. We forget about defense. And someone like Havlicek is underrated on the defensive end.
Yeah, especially with the play. RC, just to skip the jump with some of these. RC brought up, I got 4 words. Havlicek stole the ball. Which is totally fair with that. Let me go through some of these the chats before we get back into Havlicek's defensive play. Michael says the streaming is not complete without Robin. Joe says Hondo is still Celtics all-time leading scorer, which is crazy, right? I mean, that was 50
That is crazy, actually.
50 years ago. Michael says, bye, guys. Thanks for coming, Michael. Appreciate your support. As always. Joe says Celtics missed playoffs for 2 years after Russell and Jones retired. They had to rebuild. RC says Havlicek won 8 rings. Wow, he's way before my time. Where's rings with Bill Russell, I imagine? Yeah, most of them. Joe, biggest negative about Doc playing in ABA is we missed Doc versus Hondo. What do you guys think about that? I think, talking about Hondo's defense, but I think that's a more intriguing question that Joe brought up. If Doc was in the NBA and it was prime for prime, who do you think would have had the edge? Like hypothetically speaking, on let's say the 76ers. If Doc was on the 76ers earlier than he was, from I think 77 he joined the NBA. What do you got? Who do you think would have had the edge?
I think that, Havlicek's resume not change all that much, but I think Dr. J is the better player, if that makes sense. Like, just because maybe he wouldn't have beaten Havlicek, or the Sixers might have not beaten the Celtics, I still think Dr. J is the better player. So, again, if he plays in the NBA during that time, does he maybe get 1 or 2 rings? Like, maybe, possibly. There's a good chance he gets close at least. But I would take Dr. J over Havlicek. Not to say the Celtics still don't win in the end.
Mm-hmm. What do you say, Robin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Dr. J is the better player. I have him high. I have Dr. J very high in my all-time rankings. I probably have him a lot higher than most people do. He's in my top 10 all time. But, nonetheless, I think for us, Havlicek and Dr. J, I think it comes down to simple dimensions. Dr. J having those freakishly large hands, the way that he could palm the ball and manipulate the basketball, his athleticism. And I think Dr. J is also a little bit underrated defensively as well. And some of the things that he also could do rebounding the basketball wise. And like I said, just his big playability and just everything he brought to the table, just being Dr. J. You know what I'm saying? That's why he's remembered more than someone like a Havlicek. He's not Dr. J.
Yeah.
I would imagine they start the game out probably not guarding each other also. I would think. I don't know, but I would think.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Havlicek was a little bigger than him. I might be mistaken, but I think, like, just off the top of my head, I think wasn't Havlicek like 6'9", 6'10"? Dr. J was 6'6"-ish, probably really 6'4".
I don't know. I don't know how tall Havlicek was. I thought he was maybe like 6'7", but I could be wrong too. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I thought he was taller. I might be mistaken, but
Nick, you're the fat guy. Nick, come on.
I want to say they were roughly the same size. Havlicek might have a few pounds on them. I thought they were roughly both like 6'6", 6'8", something like that.
On a sidebar, I went to I grew up around the Philadelphia area, and I went to a few Sixers games, and they have Dr. J's shoe size or shoes that he wore. Like, man, and it kills me because the NBA does this. They go and they inflate the heights of people to sell, which is fine. It's a business. But I'm like, man, my feet are the same size as Dr. J's, and I'm supposedly, 3 or 4 inches smaller than him, however. And it's like, I don't know, but that's a sidebar.
He had those giant hands, though.
Yeah, dude. I was about to say. I think I told y'all a story before. I went to like some big Nike outlet in Chicago, like because of Jordan and everything, and they had like a lot of basketballs on the wall. You see players' hands, and first of all, they're all massive, right? But Rajon Rondo's hands are as big or bigger than Dwight Howard's. It was like the craziest thing I took away from that. I couldn't even wrap my head around it. It was crazy. They can almost halfway grip a basketball. It's nuts.
That's crazy.
Guys are different, yeah.
Yeah, man. It's insane.
Basic Training Day says nobody could guard Doc during his prime. Yeah, he was a monster. Basic Training Day says there's nothing about Dr. J's career that warrant him being top 10 all time. So I have to disagree. Now, for the best player, I think that's a better argument. But for greatest, Dr. J is one of the greatest in regards to all aspects of on and off the court of all time. I don't think that's. I think if you're being, true to yourself, that you would see that he was big impact culturally, let alone on the game, and just being a dominant player on the game. Now, if you talk NBA alone, sure, but with the ABA, being a big part of the dunk contest in both parts, and then just being that guy in a phrase, he was that guy in pro basketball.
Maybe I'm wrong, but it feels like after Kuzi, seems like Dr. J probably brought the most like culture or style into the game, if that makes sense. If that sort of makes any sense to y'all, like it seems like
he's Dr. J, man.
Yeah, like the free throw line dunk, the fro, like he
People
definitely
can say whatever they want. Everybody's got their top 10. You can tell me I'm crazy for having Dr. J in the top 10. I get that. That's why I said most people do not have Dr. J. I said that
crazy,
before
though.
I said this. But when we talk about Dr. J, let's be real here. When we talk about basketball and you're ranking somebody or you have someone higher than whatever, it's not just about the game on the court. It's about what you meant to the game. And Dr. J meant a lot in that era. And like you said, he was a cultural phenomenon. This guy was a baller, a flat-out baller from the street, from Rucker Park.
Yeah.
Balling for real. Everybody knows about Dr. J. There were people who have Dr. J as the greatest of all time. Some people have this man. So if that's a possibility, then he can definitely be top 10.
Dude, yeah, there's crazy pictures at Rucker Park of people sitting like on all the buildings around the park, like just to watch him play. Like it's
Dr.
definitely
J.
a cultural icon for sure. Yeah, no doubt about that.
Basic Training Day says, okay, wait. Yep, a lot of comments came in with that. Joe says, I think Doc retired as a top non-center shot blocker. Maybe, I don't know. Doc 6'6".
Probably the second best rebounding small forward ever after Baylor, I would think.
Doc 6'6", Hondo 6'5", and bare feet.
Shit.
Again.
Yeah, see, look at that right there, man. That's crazy. And
yeah.
Hondo was balling.
Yeah.
6'5", small forward.
Yeah. RC says, Basic Training Day, in terms of appeal, ability, recognition, marketability, Dr. J got to be in the mix. All-time top 10, top 20 greatest list at least. None of that, Basic Training Day replies, none of that matters when judging the best top 10. I mean, it depends on if, if you're splitting hairs and you're saying best, then...
He has LeBron in the top 10, and I laugh in his face. Because you know what? We always respected Dr. J. Nobody respects LeBron James. So he better not be in your top 10 then.
RC,
and then go check my channel.
RC says Kawhi Leonard got to be on this list, man. Mr. Load Management himself, yes. RC, guess what? I think that's a good transition. So I'll go through the comments, but we've been on Hondo for a while. So the next guy on this list, Kawhi Leonard, of all-time great small forwards. There's no list, it's just guys. But let me go through the comments before we get into the Kawhi. Basic Training says, who do you take out of the top 10 to add Dr. J? I mean, he has him in there. He's not adding anybody in there, so that's kind of a backward statement.
What kind of that, man? You kidding me?
Nobody's taken out. They just didn't make it.
This is not your top 10. It's mine.
RC says, take the load management out of the picture. Kawhi got to be on this list, man. Basic Training says, Prime Kawhi is a better overall basketball player than Dr. J. Ooh.
You see they say prime? They have to put prime before they say the player's name. That is when you know you lost what you have to say. Get out of here with the word prime, guys. Stop the word prime. Give me Michael Jordan over anyone. I don't care if it's prime or not. What does that even mean?
RC says, basic training day, I can't tell you on the spot. Joe says I have Doc on the same level as LeBron behind Bird. That's fair. Doc was, again, he is underappreciated. Another guy. Basic training day says same level as LeBron is nuts, and Dr. J himself has Braun as the GOAT. I never heard that. Dr. J says his top 5 team is all guys that played before him, last I heard. Joe says Hunter drafted by Cleveland Browns. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know he played football. Basic Train Day says Dr. J says LeBron is the GOAT, sir. Joe Coughlin says Kawhi is overrated. I think a lot of people have overrated him, but I think he is an all-time great small forward, kind of in the same light as Tracy McGrady. RC says Robin said the word prime is reserved for Colorado games. Primetime Deion Sanders.
That's right, prime time.
But yeah, what do you guys think about Kawhi? What do you think about Kawhi, Robin? Do you think he's an all-time great small forward?
Don't even get me started on this man, Kawhi Leonard. Listen, I don't want to get crazy right now. All right, because I want you guys to have your say. But there's no way I'm putting Kawhi Leonard anywhere close to the all-time great small forwards. Absolutely not. Can't do it. Will never do it. The man has refused to play for many years now. We've given the man years. Zaza Pachulia has ruined this man's career. Ruined it. And I can't do it.
So I get that, but he is a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year and a 2-time Finals MVP. Do you think that has any merit to his career?
In an era against who? Draymond Green as defense? Who did he beat out for the Defensive Player of the Year? Absolutely not. We have overrated Kawhi Leonard in the all-time rankings. This man he could have been an all-time great. We do not respect this man. There's no respect for Kawhi Leonard. Absolutely not. We can't do it. Yes, he has some nice accolades. He had a great series in 2014. But after 2017 is where it ended. He could have been right there behind Michael Jordan. He could have been right there behind Kobe Bryant. He could have been right there behind these guys. But what did he choose to do? He chose to do the opposite. Absolutely not. I'm not giving him that props.
What do you say, Nick? Do you think he deserves to be on this list?
I don't think you could put him on the list. He just hasn't done it for long enough, kind of as Robin is saying. There is an argument to say that Kawhi's peak was very impressive, right? It definitely was. For about 5 years there, he was arguably a top 5 player every year, right? And in terms of his two-way ability, obviously he's like the total package, right? In terms of what he can do when he's healthy. But can I put him on the list? No, I can't put him on the list. You know, if you want to just go with the prime argument, maybe he's top 10, top 15 small forward of all time, something like that, if we're just going to look at his prime. But yeah, I have to leave him off the list just for longevity. This is a great argument and indicator of what people think about how long do you have to do something before I can start talking about putting you on a list and comparing you to other people, right? And it feels like Kawhi just barely missed that window. Like another 2 or 3 years just playing and competing at a high level, and there's probably not, like Robin's saying, he'd be right up there, right? But it's just, I feel like he just missed out on that window to be put and compared to everyone else on this list, right? But yeah, prime Kawhi, hard to think of a more complete two-way small forward, right? Definitely was like really fun to watch. as a Mavs fan, he killed us a couple years there. He put the clamps on Luka for a year or two there, right? So I've seen it, right? I've definitely seen it. And yeah, I have a soft spot for Kawhi, but no, he did not make my list.
I think he's above T-Mac. I think being able to win two MVP or two Finals MVPs, two Defensive Player of the Years, that has a lot to say with him. Now, is he my favorite, especially with all this load management and all the things that take away from what he could have been? I agree with that. But the point is that he still did what he did and who knows? I saw this I saw this conspiracy theory which I think is funny. Is every 5 years is that Kawhi Leonard comes out and he actually plays because he won because he won it in 2014 Finals MVP, 2019 they win a championship, so they're like, this is the Clippers year. Kawhi's going to win. He's actually going to come out and play. But yeah, in regards to I think he's top 10. Maybe outside top 10. I think he's top 20 at least. Without like going down an actual list. But I do agree with the sentiments that he's got a great peak, but the longevity and sitting out a lot of time, I do believe takes away from his legacy. Now, this isn't a list. These are just some guys that I put up here. So, but I do think, would you guys say that he's top 20 at least?
Small forward? Absolutely.
Yeah, listen, if you had him top 10, I wouldn't be mad. What I'm saying is that there's no way he's in the top 5 conversation. Those guys that are in that conversation, if let's say you have 10 of those guys in the conversation for top 5, he's not in no group of those 10. He's not in that 10. The 10 that he's in is the guys who are fighting on the 15 to 10 range. Those are the guys that he's in that range. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair.
If you want to say he's better than T-Mac, I wouldn't really push back too hard against that, to be honest. I would say you probably got to give the edge to Kawhi, considering he took his team, to the finals and won as the main guy one year, and then the one he won. I know he was like the third or fourth guy, but he was still a very important player in that run in 2014. He played some really good ball too. So you probably got to put him over McGrady. That's probably fair. But my list, McGrady's on there over Leonard.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Dart, you used a good word. You said the peak that you reach, right? It's the peak, right? So when people are saying the primes, really what we want to say is their peak. Who got highest, right? Where did you reach it? Where did you go? So that's what we say when we saw Grant Hill and Anthony Hardaway. We saw what they reached. They were reaching high already, and then they had the injuries. So we like, oh, man, what they could have done. I think McGrady's peak was pretty high, but I don't think it was as high as Kawhi Leonard, because Kawhi Leonard, like you said, with the both sides, yeah, we talked about McGrady's defense, but he wasn't on Kawhi Leonard's level because Kawhi was in the voting every year. Tracy McGrady wasn't really in the voting for Defensive Player of the Year every year. You know what I'm saying? But we can also point to the different eras that they played in, who you're going against. Those things matter, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Let me go through some of these comments. Basic Training Day said that Dr. J said it on April 5th, 2022. Specific date. LeBron is the GOAT and chosen one. Dr. J. Yeah.
Awesome. Good for Dr. J. How much did LeBron pay him to say that? Guarantee he got paid to say that.
RC says Kawhi's knees were long-time working items. I'd say so. I'd say Kawhi has established himself early as a great. He's very opportunistic, making the most of his time to succeed. He's a low tier on the list. Joe says, in my opinion, if you can take a player's greatest achievement out and he's still all-time great, he has an argument. Take out Toronto year and he's Andre Iguodala, talking about Kawhi.
No, come on now.
Yeah. I think he means with the final.
Now you're gonna get me riled up.
No, I think Kawhi's better than Andre Iguodala, but I get the
1000%.
Yeah.
You need the gunshots for that one, man. You need the gunshots for that.
Yeah, here we go. Where is it? I haven't used it in a while. There you go.
Oh yeah, I was shocked by the Kawhi Leonard.
Yeah.
Oh man. Although my favorite dunk of all time might be that one Andre caught from behind the backboard in
He should
dunk.
have
That
won
might.
the slam dunk contest,
I
Andre
think so
Iguodala,
too.
in my
I
opinion.
think so too.
I do
Yeah.
think he's underrated. I'm not saying he's on like the tier, like on the tier of these guys, but a lot of people like Andre Iguodala was a great player. Now I got 6.
He's had a great career for sure. Like
He
something to be
fits in
proud
no
of.
matter where he goes.
Yeah.
True pro.
RC says stop the cap at basic training day. He said it's verbatim and easily verifiable in regards to Dr. J's statement. Joe says
Nobody cares what Dr. J said, man. No one cares. No one cares. I
Is
got
that
video
Tug?
of these guys flip-flopping all over the place, man.
Is that
That's why
Tug?
they
Is
have
that
no
Tug?
integrity when it comes to that. It means nothing. We have the videotape.
Joe says RC and MJ says there's no GOAT, but you still have one, right? RC says Kawhi showed me though he didn't want to win when he went to the Clippers. And then Basic Training says that's MJ's opinion. Dr. J's opinion is different. I guess in regards to the GOAT. RC says, Joe, I don't really have a definitive GOAT. I have a few 1A, 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 which doesn't make sense and so forth. MJ included.
Do that, man.
He's got a handful of goats.
Basic Training says, I have a GOAT of every decade. An overall GOAT isn't reasonable because guys played in different eras with different rules and different levels of competition. I think it's a
That's
fair...
the easy way out.
We're not doing the GOAT debate right now.
Easy way out.
Joe says Iggy suited up every day. I think this is a good transition to the next player. I know this is one of Robin's favorite players, especially of recent on his channel, Sports and Fitness Rants. Scottie Pippen. What do you guys think about Scottie Pippen as an all-time great small forward? Robin, since I'll let you start, since he's been the topic of many of your
No, let
your
it go.
videos.
Letting it go.
All right.
Letting it go.
Yeah, so I'll admit I'm a bit of a Pippen hater. You know, I don't think that. I think he's a little overrated. That's just my opinion in terms of all-time greats, right? He gets thrown up there a lot with small forwards. I have him on my list by default, right? But he leaves a little bit to be desired on the offensive end. Again, great defensive guy. I think he benefited a lot, obviously, playing with MJ. That's just my 2 cents. We don't have to get into all that. But again, I think he's a great glue guy, right? But I don't think he's really excels at any one or two things that gives him some kind of edge over these other guys, right? On this list, you have better scorers, passers, rebounders, even maybe defenders than Pippen, right? So I kind of have him, slip him in at the 5 spot or something. He won 6 rings with MJ. That's got to count for something. He was an integral part of those championships. So he's definitely up here on the list. So I, out of respect, kind of put him at number 5 at the end of my list, something like that. Me personally, I probably would leave him off my top 5 if I was just going to do like my own sort of subjective, really biased opinion, right? But he's worthy of being on the list, so I put him at number 5.
Yeah, no, I respect that, man. But there's no way, no how, no way that Scottie Pippen is ever going to be a top 5 small forward of all time. He's just not, like you said, he's just not in the conversation with those guys, man. The guys that are the top 5 small forwards of all time, to me, those guys are just on another tier.
I agree.
When I think about guys like Larry Bird, man, and even LeBron James, man, he's not in those conversations. Dr. J, John Havlicek, Elgin Baylor, is he greater than Kevin Durant? I mean, is he greater than Bernard King? Was he better than Dominique Wilkins? Was he better than Rick Barry? Was he better? He wasn't really in a conversation with those guys. Like you said, he's become a little bit inflated because they're just trying to bring Jordan down. There's no facts behind this. Once again, we have the video footage. Everything that we watched growing up, it didn't point to Scottie Pippen being in the all-time great conversation as far as like the top players in the league. Those were guys like Karl Malone and John Stockton and Michael Jordan and David Robinson and Hakeem Olajuwon and Patrick Ewing and Chris Mullin. These guys were better than Scottie Pippen. Is Scottie Pippen greater than Chris Mullin? I don't know. Chris Mullin averaged like 25 points a game for like 5 seasons straight shooting the lights out, dribbling, all kinds of things on the offensive end. Yeah, Scottie Pippen was a great defensive player, no doubt about it. But let's be real here. He was allowed to focus on the defensive end mostly because he's playing with the greatest player of all time.
Exactly.
So what I want to say is that I do think Scottie Pippen I would put him on my top 5 small forwards of all time. And I get what you're saying. Like, okay, so I agree that he was not the leader. He was not the catalyst like a lot of these other guys on the list to draw the team to make it the best team in the league. But he was a very important part. He was versatile. And you're talking about LeBron James. I would say that he's a LeBron James light, minus having a little. I would say that Scotty's a better defender overall, and LeBron's a better scorer overall. But I feel that they kind of have a lot of the same skill sets. But what I'm getting at is that I do think that he deserves to be on this list because he was, in my opinion, I think a lot of people agree, the second best team on those, or second best player on those Bulls on the Bulls teams. And and do I think he was as good of a scorer as Jordan? No, but like you said, Robin, they allowed Jordan to be himself as the scorer, as the primary scorer on that team. So, and Scotty had a lot to do with that, passing the ball to him, also playing the defense. So I think he deserves a big, I'm not saying you're saying this, but he deserves a big part of credit of those Bulls championship runs.
Listen, hold on a second here. The problem with Scottie Pippen, as it relates to what you just said, is the consistency. That was his problem. When we think about the Chicago Bulls and all their success, the one constant that we always know was who? Michael Jordan, right? But then when you say that Scottie Pippen was the second player for all those years, what I will tell you, I saw growing up, is that from series to series, from year to year, there were different guys who were bigger than Scottie Pippen in these series, in these games. It might have been Horace Grant. It might have been B.J. Armstrong, or it might have been Luke Longley, or Ron Harper, Tony Kukoc. It would have been some of these guys. Even in the second, it was consistent. It was the biggest problem with the Bulls.
You're cutting out.
We're losing you.
Robin, we're losing you. You there?
I can't hear you guys.
We're losing you, Robin. I'm gonna let me cut to the chat real fast. Joe says Iggy suited up every day as a herd of goats. Basic training says easy way out. It's called context. Joe says Pippen was great. How many small forward had Pip's versatility? That was kind of my point. Training day, he's not a top 5 small forward, top 10 arguably. Joe says T-Mac couldn't play with Vince. What could have been? But Pippen elevated with MJ equals overrated. I agree with that, but I don't think that's what Nick was saying. But yeah, that's why I have Pippen over T-Mac. Pippen is RC says Pippen is a legendary both sides of the ball, hard-nosed, versatile defender, great play initiator, depth at passing, perfect place to pair with Pippen, aka Mr. Versatility himself. Mullen had empty stats on a non-playoff team. Ooh. Mullen averaged 13 points per game in the playoffs.
You didn't watch basketball back then. You just exposed yourself.
You just exposed yourself.
Mullen averaged.
Expose yourself. That's what they do with these comments.
Mullen averaged 13 points per game in the playoffs. Relax per basic training day. And he said Mullen ain't on Scotty's level.
Yeah.
RC says.
Yeah.
That's why he was on the dream team, right? He was on the dream team by accident. He was on the dream team because he was white. That's why he was on the dream team. Go pull up Chris Mullen highlights now. Go put any highlights Scottie Pippen had. It's not.
Robin, you're roboting.
We're losing you, Robin. Your connection. I don't know. It's happening again.
Yeah, my big knock against Pippen is just that he was not like amazing or great at any one thing. Yes, he was a great defender, right? But again, that's why I said he's like the consummate glue guy, right? Literally in the dictionary of basketball, glue guy, there should be a picture of Scottie Pippen, I feel like. Again, just he wasn't amazing on offense. He was a great defender on defense. And then that's kind of it, right? And I just feel like when it comes to a lot of these other guys, right? Again, there's better rebounders, better passers, better scorers. Guys were great at other things or multiple things than Pippen, or did everything else the same, right? That's just my big thing with Pippen, right? Like if we looked at what Kawhi did in his peak, correct? As a two-way player, scoring, defending, and what he did leading his team, right? In my opinion, Kawhi's better than Pippen in many ways, right? Even skill set wise, achievement wise. Again, Pippen played with Jordan, so that's kind of hard to overcome. But Leonard's peak is, in my opinion, better than anything we saw from Pippen. In my 2 cents, right? So that's just I put Pippen out of respect on the list. He probably does not make my own personal top 5. I probably put Havlicek in at the 5 over Pippen in terms of that last spot. That's just my 2 cents. But yeah, that's how I feel about Pippen. He was like a great hustle glue guy, which is deadly next to Jordan, right? Someone like Jordan, you give him a guy like him and Rodman who are just motors. That's a pretty potent comparison or teaming up right there.
But and so I think Pippen was better than Kawhi, but to be fair, having 2 defensive player of the years and 2 finals MVPs matters. I just think that 6 beats 2, and that even though he wasn't the best guy on the team, that he, like you said, he was the glue guy. And I do think he was the glue guy outside of Michael Jordan being the star and being the catalyst of, he was the drive of that team. I do think Michael Jordan was the real leader of that team. So when I mean glue guy,
of course, yeah.
So when
I say glue guy, like your best player can't be a glue guy, right? Like the glue guy's got to do the dirty work. He's got to focus on other things. I think it's really hard for like your glue guy to be your best guy. That's why, like when I say glue guy, I meant he essentially did everything else around Jordan that was needed, right? Which is obviously very important, and not just anybody could do it. But yeah, that's just what I meant by glue guy. Obviously, Jordan was 100%. Like when we talk about like Shaq and Kobe, both those guys are better than Pippen, right? Any other duo you can just about think of that were like great duos in the finals, the first and second guy are almost always better than Pippen. That's another one of my big knocks is like looking back, it feels like Jordan carried him more and more the more I think about it and look back into it, right? The years without Jordan, Pippen was exactly who we thought he was, right? He was not really any better, statistically. So that's just kind of, there's just a few knocks on Pippen I can't get over.
I grew up watching this stuff, man. Absolutely not. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not or see me, but I'm telling you right now, Scottie Pippen was not that dude. Listen, Scottie Pippen was great for his role, what he meant. Who did he ask to induct him into the Hall of Fame? Let's think about this. He asked Michael Jordan. Why did he ask Michael Jordan? I always say this. Because he understood what Michael Jordan meant to him. Let's think about the all-time greats in history. How many of them asked their teammate to induct them into the Hall of Fame? The same teammate that was seen as a big brother to them all those years when Scottie Pippen was getting migraines, when Scottie Pippen got elbowed in the head and he missed the Game 6 in 1989. All those years when the Pistons had him mentally shrink and Michael Jordan had to pick him up off the floor. All those years. There were other guys there too. Horace Grant came in the same year as Scottie Pippen. He meant just as much.
I'm here. Just give me a second.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
I don't even know if you guys hear me.
Yeah, we heard you. You were loud and clear that time.
Yeah, no, man. I'm just listen. Like I said, man. When I was growing up watching this stuff, man, I'm 43 years old. I grew up. I remember this stuff when I was a kid, and we never thought once that it was because of Scottie Pippen that the Bulls were winning, all we always knew as a kid is that we understood that all the players around Michael Jordan did their jobs and helped Michael Jordan win. But he was the guy while they were winning. We never took away from Scottie Pippen. We rooted for Scottie Pippen. He was a great player. But once again, he played his role. He didn't have to worry about other teams getting planning for him every day. He didn't have to worry about being the main guy every night. He didn't have to deal with the media like Michael Jordan. He even said that Michael Jordan shielded us from things we didn't even know about. That's why Michael Jordan, like I said, always seen as a leader and always wanted to find MVP conversation with Scottie Pippen, because he was never, like you said, that close to Michael Jordan. There was such a huge gap. He never threatened Michael Jordan for that vote. Like even a James Worthy, a Joe Dumars, a Tony Parker, all these guys who have won the Finals MVP playing alongside an all-time legend.
Absolutely. You there, Dart?
I guess I'll show that. We're going to take over the show, NNB Sports, and your boy Sports and Fitness Rants. We're here, Dart's on a little bathroom break. We're talking about the greatest small forwards of all time.
While I have this opportunity, let me tell all of the watchers to go subscribe to NNB Sports and Sports and Fitness Rants. Watch your Dallas Mavericks this year. Support your local Dallas teams.
You want to hear someone yell? Texas A&M?
Yeah, Texas A&M. Yeah, got a big win yesterday, although we lost our quarterback, so we'll see how that goes.
My son came in. I had to help him out with something, but yeah. Subscribe to these guys because they're terrible. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Bro, I got to like 989, 990, 991. I was like cruising for subs. Got like 200 in a month. Mm-hmm. And then like 150 in a month. And it's just dead stopped at like 993, 994, like the last month. It's like, what the fuck, man?
That's what happens.
Someone at YouTube's watching me, man. They're hating.
Robin's been
gotta keep striving.
Robin's been just blowing up the last couple of weeks, man. It's been crazy. I was flirting with his subscriber number. I was like within 10, and then he got like 200 in a week, and he's been getting like 200 a week since then. So I'm really happy.
Yeah, dude, he's doing like two videos a day.
Yeah,
That's tough, man. Yes, yo, that much respect, there. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
I'm doing 2 videos a day. They're just not as good as his.
I'm trying to do some shorts and work on some longer videos. I'm just yelling. I'm just venting.
Just yelling at people, man. That's why it's the rants. We're ranting.
Yeah.
So I think, are we down to our top 3 now? I think we're left with. Or did I miss somebody?
Oh, we got 4 left. But let me go through some of the chat and we'll get to the next guy since you brought it up. RC says Pippen is a top 10 all time, just not in the top 5. However, somebody says top 5, I'm going to argue with them. Pippen was Grant Hill on steroids. Joe says, I love Pippen's game. He excelled beside the greatest ever. Could the others on your list excel under those conditions? Hondo and Pip were similar. RC says, Robin is turning into Optimus Prime right before our eyes. That's when you were lagging. Joe, that's a completely different story. Don't conflate. Bill Russell and Honda were essentially both glue guys, though. Yeah, and I just a quick take on that. Yeah, sometimes the leader can be the glue guy, but I think most of the time the leader, it's 2 separate things. The star.
That's also a little different because the way the Boston Celtics played back then, you never knew who was going to get 20 points a game. It could have been anybody, right? Like, yeah, the Celtics, you're right. The Celtics maybe are a bit of an exception, but back in that day, right, they didn't really they were all glue guys running around, passing the ball. Whoever got the best shot would just take it, right? So you kind of got me on that, but a little bit of an asterisk too.
It popped up a second. Joe says he was on the dream team because Worley and Dominique were hurt. Talking about Mullen, and he said, "Don't say prime." Joe said, "I guess about you, Robin." Basic says Christian Laettner was on the dream team. So what? Empty stats on the last place team ain't it? Ooh,
man, the Mullen hate is real, dude.
That's because they did not watch Chris Mullin growing up. You
the
guys,
Mullin
once
hates off
again,
the charts.
go watch some video of Chris Mullin. Go educate. See, this is why we're here, for the education. So I'm hoping that you guys will go out and do some research. Watch this guy, Chris Mullin, and understand. You can say whatever you want about injuries, about James Worthy and this guy and that guy. Once again, they're just excuses. They could have went with anybody else other than Chris Mullin. Once again, he was there for a reason. I believe he was also there in '84, if I'm not mistaken. So once again, put some respect on Chris Mullin's name. The dude is legit. Say whatever you want about bad teams. Who was Chris Mullin playing? Was he playing with Michael Jordan? Give Michael Jordan Chris Mullin, okay? And the only reason I said prime Chris Mullin is to relate to you guys, because that's the term that's always used. But for me, when you think about Chris Mullin's peak and what he could do all around, you're underrating him.
All right. So
Hey guys, I kind of need to get going. I hate to cut out in the middle. I just thought it was gonna be me and Dart. It'd be like over in an hour.
Oh, my bad, man. I'm sorry, man.
No. Like me and Dart, we were talking about all sorts of stuff. So I gotta run though. But do you want me to just give him my list real quick?
Yeah, sure. Why not? Yeah.
I got Larry Joe Bird as 1 through 5 for the greatest small forwards of all time, and that's it. That's my list. That should be the list. I got Bird 1. I've got Dr. J at 2. I'll probably put Havlicek at 5, Durant at 4, and LeBron at 3.
Just before you leave, Nick, Joe Coughlin says you are my Pippin. I thought that was funny.
And his Pippin?
Just before you left, I thought you should hear that. I thought that was funny.
Touche. Well played.
But yeah, thanks for coming, Nick. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And
absolutely. Thanks, guys.
And check out his channel if you haven't, NMB Sports.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. I'll talk to y'all later.
Yep, later.
Yo, Nick, be good, man.
Later.